Hey, what's up, guys? Okay, so once again, before I start talking about this week's chapter, I do want to just quickly say that I hope you're all trying to stay safe out there with this whole COVID-19 business. Just stay healthy. I'm not going to really talk about it anymore because I know I at least am sick of hearing people talking about it. I'm sure you all are as well. So that's all I'm going to say. It's just, hope you're all staying healthy. And if you are, just continue doing what you're doing. But anyway, before I actually do get into the chapter, I do want to quickly announce the news in case you missed it earlier this week, and that is that basically the studio that animates Black Clover, I'm blanking on what the studio's name is right now, but basically earlier this week they announced what their plans are in order to, counteract the fact that they are only about 20 or so chapters behind where the manga currently is. And the reason why that's the problem, in case you weren't, keeping up with things, the reason why that's a problem is because usually an episode of Black Clover, as long as it's not filler, covers about 2.5 chapters worth of material. So, with them only being about 20 or so chapters ahead, and each episode covering about 2.5 chapters, within the next 10 to 15 episodes, they would have been caught up. And basically, what they plan to do to counteract that is, and this is actually something I suggested about like 4-5 chapters ago when I first discovered that this was actually a situation that they were in. That is basically once we get to the point in the anime when Asta, Noelle, and the gang get invited to train in the Heart Kingdom for half a year, instead of giving us a time skip like we got in the manga, they're actually going to animate that training arc in the anime. So we're actually going to get to see everything that Asta, Noelle, and all of them did to get to the power levels that they are at currently in the manga. And I'm actually really excited about this because of the fact that not only are we actually getting to see, content that I was actually hoping we get to see in the manga, even though it is technically filler in the anime, we are actually going to have Tabata Yuki actually overseeing this arc. He's not going to be writing it himself, but he's going to be making sure that the people who are writing it are, keeping the characters in the same kind of personalities that they usually have, making sure things, still match up with the canon, stuff like that, and basically keeping this filler arc on track. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing what actually ends up coming out of this. Anyway, getting into the actual chapter, there's a little note on the very first page on the left side of the very first panel. I don't know if it's an editor's note or if it's actually a note from the translator himself, but what it reads is basically an instance of anticipation. And that is literally the best way I can describe this entire chapter, because ever since Dante has shown up at the doorstep of the Black Bulls headquarters, everyone has been anticipating when Yami would show up again and the two of them will face off. Even people like me who has said time and time again that I don't believe, even with how badass Yami is, that he would realistically stand a chance against Dante. Even I was still very, very much anticipating when Yami would finally show up on the battlefield and square off against Dante. Now, I was hoping that he wouldn't be doing a one-on-one, because like I said, I didn't think that Yami actually stood a chance against him. But I'm still excited to see the fight that we actually get from him in this chapter. And you know what? I'll say it. This chapter completely blew my expectations out the water. It completely proved that I was wrong about what Yami's capabilities are. And I'm actually excited to see where this fight continues on from where we left off. Now, before I actually get into the fight, because pretty much this entire chapter is just a fight between Dante and Yami, there's not really much else after it. But anyway, before I get into the actual fight, I do want to make a quick note, and this is actually something I missed out on in the last chapter. If you take a look at Yami's outfit, the belt buckle that he has on in this chapter, and actually in the last chapter as well, is different from the one he usually wears. The one he usually wears is actually very basic and plain. There's not really anything on it. But the new one that he's wearing in these last two chapters actually has what looks like a rose on it, which I've seen some people commenting that maybe that's actually like a gift from Charlotte. Maybe, now that she's actually made the very conscious decision to admit her feelings for Yami, maybe she's actually actively trying to, persuade him into dating her or something like that. Maybe she's actually actively trying to go for a relationship with him. I personally think that it could either be that, which I would like, or it could be basically maybe because of the fact that we do see that Yami did do some training over these past 6 months and he didn't just sit on his ass. Maybe he actually did go to the Heart Kingdom as well to train with Asta and all of them, and maybe he got it there. And like I said, I'd ultimately be okay with either explanation as to how Yami got it. Although if I did really have to pick one or over the other, I guess I would actually choose the Charlotte explanation and basically her giving it to him as a gift, over him just basically getting it from training in the Heart Kingdom. And the reason why I will say that is because of the fact that it is notoriously well known that if it's not a rom-com, when it comes to Shonen Jump series, the authors are usually depicted or usually go about saying that they're not really good at depicting romance in their series. That's why even though there are usually hints of romance in the background of the series that they do, looking at like Naruto or Bleach, stuff like that, we really don't get any real development from them until the very end of the series. Again, looking at like Naruto, Bleach. I mean, even Boku no Hero Academia is kind of guilty of this when you look at what's going on with Ochoko and Midoriya. Ochoko admitted not that long ago that she actually does have feelings for Deku, but because of the fact that I guess the writer's not really good at doing romance, or doesn't want to really focus on the romance part of the story, he actively decided to have her bury those feelings in order to not get in the way of Deku's dream. Now, I could just be misinterpreting exactly what the plan is, and maybe he actually does plan on developing the romance in that series even more between those two characters. But like I said, in most Shonen Jump series, romance isn't really that well developed until the end of the series. Again, looking at Naruto and looking at a lot of couples that we ended up getting from the characters in Naruto and Boruto, a lot of them did not make any sense. So that's why I would actually like to see Black Clover, breaking that mold of Shonen Jump series outside of rom-coms, not being good at developing romance, and see, Tabata try to like slowly build up romance between two characters. Like, right now we have Charlotte and Yami starting, and then eventually we can get to, Asta eventually developing a romance between one of the 16,000 girls that actually have feelings for him. But anyway, getting into the actual fight, man, I got to say, I always love when Yami enters a fight, because each time, and I know technically this is actually what happened in the last chapter, but each time Yami enters a fight, it is the most badass entry. I mean, just looking back to what he did the first time he fought against Patry, the badass way he entered that fight out of nowhere, I was just like, man, I was just trying to take a shit, and now I'm here. What's going on, And then seeing exactly how Yami enters this fight, protecting his crew, protecting his friends, and getting extremely pissed off when he sees the states that Asta and Goucher are in, and just basically saying, hey, listen. Because usually when Yami gets into a fight, usually when Yami starts getting into a fight, he's not 100% serious. I mean, he's serious, but he usually has like this joking tone to him. In this chapter, when he gets into this fight with Dante, he is not playing around at all. He is 125% pissed off at Dante for what he did to his crew, and he's ready to just basically kill him, as he says in this chapter. In the beginning of the chapter, the first line of dialogue from Yami is, "I'm gonna kill you," which of course Dante actually responds to it by basically attacking Yami and Finnral, using that same gravitation magic to basically try to force them down to the ground, because right now they're floating in the air. Which, by the way, speaking of that, each magic that we see Dante use in this chapter is the same spells that he used against Asta in their fight. So we haven't really seen him to use anything new. He's still at 60% when he's fighting against Yami, so keep that in mind. We didn't see him go to, 75 or even 80 just yet. So keep in mind, in everything that he does in this fight, he's still at 60%. Now, what's really interesting is that even though Dante's magic does cause Yami and Finnral to come crashing down to the ground, Yami's actually able to pretty much withstand it and stand up, and actually even catches Finnral from crashing into the ground himself. And it looks like the reason why Yami's able to do that is because he's basically covering his skin, and he's basically using mana skin in order to stand. And it's a little confusing, because in the next panel after we see Yami, we see basically he's saying that he's using some kind of move called Mana Zone Black Blood. But he's never really showing exactly what Mana Zone Black Blood actually does or what it is. So I just kind of assumed that it might just be the mana skin that he's using in order to stand up against Dante's attack. And then we see him use a different Mana Zone attack called Mana Zone Black Moon, which basically creates a black hole orb, throws into the sky, and then that orb creates a bubble around Yami that basically nullifies any magic inside that area. So basically Dante's gravity magic is completely canceled out. It's kind of like Asta's anti-magic, which is very interesting. I'm really trying to figure out exactly how that works, and I think that's something that Dante says later on in the chapter actually might explain it, but I'll get to that later. Okay, so after Yami activates Black Moon, we get this little moment where he actually does it. We don't actually get to see him telling Finnral. It's basically just we're looking at Black Moon, we're looking at it from far out distant view, and we get just get these little bits of text where Yami tells Finnral to actually go check on the others, and Finnral's kind of quickly freaking out, but we can assume that he does go to check on Asta and Gouch. But my question is, why didn't we get a scene in this chapter? If we're going to get a little bit of dialogue between the two of them where he tells Finnral to go check on them, why didn't we get a scene where we see Finnral using his spatial magic to teleport the two of them away? Because very obviously, this is a situation where they should all be getting out of there. Or at least the, people who are too injured to fight. And the only reason why I could think of as to why they wouldn't do the very logical thing of basically getting the at least very two injured people out of the fight is because of the fact that we're actually going to see in the next few chapters, before this, fight with Dante officially ends, Asta getting back up in helping out Yami against Dante. And of course, it could also be the reason as to we need Finnral to stick around, because maybe this is where Tabata is going to plan on showing off exactly what the result of Finnral's training for 6 months actually, came to. Because I mean, as of right now, him and Nero are the only two from the 5 that we saw originally go to the Heart Kingdom and get invited to train that we haven't seen exactly what they are actually capable of now. We've seen what Asta can do, we've seen a little bit of what Noelle can do, and we've seen a little bit of what Mimosa can do. And hell, we've even seen what Luck and Leo can kind of do. But we have yet to see exactly what Finnral and Nero are capable of now. So I'm actually excited to see if I am right about, Finnral actually sticking around as a possibility of Tabata, planning on using him in this fight and showcasing what he's capable of now. I'm excited to see what, comes of that. Because, I mean, man, I've been calling for a while now for Finnral to finally break out of that whole support mage, role that he's been in since the beginning of the series, and finally learn some kind of, offensive way to use his spatial magic. But anyway, the fight continues. Dante now realizes that because of the, Black Moon, he's not really going to be able to use his gravity magic effectively, right against Yami. So what he does is basically he picks up a rock and he just tries to hurl it really fast at Yami, hoping that the inertia from the speed of the rock would cause enough damage to take him out. And of course, Yami actually just uses his dark cloaked dimensional slash to cut right through the rock, which is when Dante kind of comments on the fact that Yami cut right through space, which is actually the reason why I think his dark magic doesn't, or is actually canceling out the gravity that Dante's using on him, because of the fact that maybe somehow the fact that they can negate space and time negates the gravity magic that Dante's using in other people's magic as well. Maybe that's a possibility. I'm still trying to work on the theory exactly how that works, but as of right now, I think that's what's going on. That basically Yami's dark moon, basically because of the fact that his dark magic does affect space and time, it negates any type of magic inside the vicinity of it. But anyway, once that doesn't work, Dante decides for some odd reason to create again a sword out of stone. And he ends up using the same magic that he used against Asta in the last chapter, that gravitation magic, I think it was called Heavy Infight. He uses it on the sword instead, which is kind of interesting. I guess he can use it on other things besides just his fist. But he decides to attack Yami in a sword fight, which leads me to think that maybe Dante and the rest of the Dark Triad didn't really do that much information gathering on Yami, because if there's anything you can tell from Yami just by looking at him, is that he's a swordsman. So if you're not a natural swordsman, or if you have no real training in sword fighting, why would you try to fight someone who does have training in it? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, it could just be that Dante's just that cocky that he thinks that even if he doesn't have any training in sword fighting, he can still go to toe-to-toe with Yami. But you know what, I do at the hand of Dante, he was holding his own against Yami in the sword fight. And in fact, if you really look at the fight throughout the entire chapter, it does seem like the two of them are kind of evenly matched. Which, I gotta say, me completely eating crow here, because of the fact that I said in the last chapter and pretty much every chapter review when I talked about Yami showing up to the battlefield, I didn't think Yami would really stand that much of a chance against Dante alone, no matter how much of a badass I think he was. I didn't think he was strong enough to take on Dante, and that he would only really be able to defeat him, or at the very least hold him at a standstill, if he teamed up against Asta, or he teamed up with Asta and the rest of the Black Wolves to, fight off against Dante. But as we can see in this chapter, Yami's actually very well holding his own. And it actually kind of seems like for a majority of chapter 2 of them are very evenly matched. But if you really do examine the fight, if you go back and actually had to do a little bit of digging and reread this chapter about 3 or 4 times, if you examine the way the fight goes, Yami's really the one who has the advantage throughout the entire fight. Because I mean, think about it, when the beginning of the fight starts, Yami's really only reacting to Dante's attacks. When Dante uses his gravitation magic to kind of crash Yami down to the ground, Yami activates his own magic in order to hold himself up. When Dante throws a rock at him, Yami activates another attack spell to basically cut the rock in half, not really trying to do any attacks on Dante just yet. And when Dante creates a sword and goes in to attack Yami, Yami reactively, responds by using his sword to block the attacks. And we really only see Yami actively attack Dante 2 times in the chapter. The first time is when the two of them are, crossing swords, and Yami just does a simple slash against Dante, and of course Dante dodges it because it's nothing special. And then the second time is at the very end of the chapter, where we actually get to see Yami use a brand new technique, which I believe he called it the Dark Cloaked Eye Slash. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. It's basically I-A-I. I'm not sure exactly what it's supposed to say. But those are the only 2 times that we actually see Yami actively attack against Dante. And, he does eventually end up landing at least one very strong hit against him, versus Dante, who doesn't land a single hit against Yami throughout the entire chapter. Pretty much each attack that Dante threw at Yami was blocked. And I mean, we do have to keep in mind the fact that Dante is only using 60% of his demonic powers right now. He still can go up all the way to 80%. And I'm sure when he does activate the full 80%, he will outmatch Yami. But based on the way Yami was fighting in the chapter and how easily he was kind of counteracting Dante's attacks, it's very easy to say that he is stronger than Dante's 60%. And I think it actually might be realistic to say that maybe now that Yami's done the 6 months of training, that his power level actually might be equivalent to Dante using up to 70% of his power. Okay, so there's actually 2 more things I actually want to talk about before I finish talking about the fight. First thing is that if you notice during the fight, there's actually a panel we get to see a Dante very close up. And if you look to the left, the left side of his face, you can see that whoever is the cleaner for the translations, they were using like the copy stamp tool and or the clone stamp tool, and basically what they did is they clone stamped Dante's, nose and mustache, so you can see it on the left side of his face as well, right next to his actual nose and mustache. It was kind of funny to see that. It kind of completely threw the loop for me and completely broke out the chapter for me, but it was still like a funny moment. The second thing is, throughout the entire fight, Dante is basically trying to taunt Yami, basically saying that he's going to take the Arcane Stage Mages, which is basically Vanessa, Gray, and Asta, away with him. And of course, Yami's not really falling into it. He's basically saying that he basically gives a whole friend speech about how, like, the reason why he chose all these characters or chose all of them to be like part of his crew is because, he likes them. That's really it. There's no really to it, because Dante's kind of really trying to belittle them, say that, they're a ragtag bunch, they're outsiders, they're, people who aren't fit to be magic knights or, be any nobility or anything like that. And of course, none of it, really faces Yami. He just kind of takes pride in the fact that, they're his crew. But the other thing that he mentions is that, honestly, we knew that he was Yami's goal. The reason why he was attacking the base in the first place was in order to kidnap Yami. And the one thing he mentions is that Yami is actually the key to accessing a different world. And I'm a little confused by what he means by that, and I'm waiting for the official translation to come out before I really start thinking of real theories for it. But when I was reading the chapter, I couldn't help but think to myself, like, after we got this line of dialogue, and I thought back to the dialogue that we got earlier in the chapter, when Dante mentions how Yami's magic cut through space. I'm wondering if what he's saying in this part of the chapter is that basically maybe Yami's dark magic is able to actually cut through space and time, and that's the reason why they're after him, because they're planning on using him to basically cut a door open between the 2 dimensions, between the human world and the demon world, and basically give access to the human world to demons from there, like basically let them just pour in. And that would actually make a lot of sense as to why, Lucifer and Megikulo and whatever Zeno's demon is actually are working with them, because maybe that's actually their end result, or like their end goal is to basically flood the world and basically take over the world with their demons. But this begs the question as to, if they only need Yami to do this, why are they capturing other Arcane Stage Mages? Because I'm having a hard time trying to figure out exactly how William's abilities would factor into Yami activating a door. And again, the only thing I can really think of right now is that maybe Yami is the key, his magic's the key, but in order to activate that level of strength, they would need other Arcane Stage Mages to basically give their power to him by basically draining their mana, their unique abilities, and giving it to Yami, and then forcing him to use his dark magic to activate a doorway that, again, will let the demons come in. Okay, so last thing I want to mention before I end the review is that Yami actually looks like a total badass in that final shot at the end of the chapter when he uses that brand new technique against Dante and lands a hit. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to mention how badass Yami looks in that scene. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for the chapter. That's going to do it for me. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. Comment down below with your thoughts and theories. Sorry the video came out on Saturday instead of Friday. Try to get it done on Friday, but just didn't make it. But anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories, and I will catch you guys next week. Peace.